My name is Dr. Marek Laskevich. I am the Chairman and Deputy Rector of the Polona Universitatis in Exteris. I am the leader and founder of the Polish Association in Great Britain. I'm a member of the British International Studies Association, a member of the British Political Studies Association, a member of the Royal Historical Society. I'm also the Chairman of the Polish Social and Cultural Association, and I'm also the Secretary General of the Polish Society of Arts and Sciences Abroad. Today, what I'm going to talk about is the future of the Russian war. It is, of course, being called a Russian-Ukrainian conflict. Actually, it's nothing of the sort. It is the start of the gradual escalation towards World War III. The first point to note is that if Putin succeeds in conquering Kiev, then Ukraine will have legally fallen. Afterwards, he has to obviously occupy Western Ukraine. However, this should be relatively little problem considering he's conquered the capital. The problem is, of course, that will he stop there? Now, he has had a huge success and has gained a province which is very rich in terms of wheat and in terms of people, and also, of course, historically linked to Russia. He could, of course, quite easily take over Belarus. There's not a real problem there. He might even be invited in. So the real question concerns the Balts, Kazakhstan, countries and Georgia, countries which previously made up the Soviet Union. Would he be able to conquer them? Well, it is quite clear he can. What the West has done by failing to stop this invasion of Ukraine is it's told him that it's not interested in defending former USSR regions, provinces to be more accurate. Therefore, it follows logically there's no obvious reason why he could not incorporate, by means of military conquest, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, and Kazakhstan and Georgia. But here comes the key question: would he stop there? The problem relies on the fact that it is very hard to work out his motives in some respect, but in others it's crystal clear. He aims to restore Russia as the leading nation. In order to do that, he wants to resuscitate the Soviet Empire. And a country like Poland, which is the next obvious target and a step up in terms of escalation, is an obvious target because it has actually been part of the Russian Empire, not only under the Soviet Empire, but under the previous Tsarist Empire. If he chooses to do so, and I stress this will be a major escalation upwards because the conquest of the USSR de facto the West has agreed to tacitly, then he is then going on directly on NATO territory. And this may well provoke a response. It should do, but then again in 1994, Ukraine was promised security of its frontiers by both America and Russia. Russia invaded, and America did nothing. And therefore, from this respect, it's by no means clear what's going to happen in Poland. What is clear is that eventually, if he chooses to go further into Germany, at that point, there really would be a war because the West sees Germany as a part of the West. Poland is part of the Zwischenland, the in-between countries. This being a possibility, it follows logically that the West may choose to use Poland as a battleground. If so, such a war would rapidly scale up from conventional to the next stage up, which would be a war involving nuclear weapons. This would be involving tactical nukes in Poland, so Poland would be utterly devastated. Of course, they may spread. Germany may be affected, Ukraine and Belarus. However, one of the points to make here is that the West missed two opportunities to put an end to this sort of, if you like, future. Firstly, the UN troops should have been deployed on the Ukrainian frontier about 2 weeks, 3 weeks before, when the Russians were first doing their exercises. Such a move might well have halted Putin, in the sense it would have made the whole business of invading Ukraine more risky. Number two, they could have reinforced the Ukrainian army, which clearly to some degree is prepared to fight, but is simply no match for the Russian forces. Whether, therefore, the West decides to do anything or not, it will be forced to do so at some point, otherwise the Russians will conquer more and more. What will happen, therefore, is now predictable, assuming what Putin wishes to do is to restore Russia's prestige and empire. If this is his goal, then the route forward is quite simple, as I've stated. The Balts will come next, together with Kazakhstan and Georgia, if that is his goal. It does appear to be. It would fit in my theories, and I have predicted this from September 1990 in letter to The Economist, then in books in 1992, Russia and World War III, now reprinted as an ebook, and the analysis of how the war itself will take place. I also published afterwards World War III, A Military Conflict, and that's been recently republished as an ebook. The prediction, however, has one problem. Sure, it has to some degree worked out. Russia, as I predicted in 1990, would in fact eventually be led by a dictator, which is what Putin needs in all but name. Yes, it's true he has taken over Crimea first and then now the Ukraine, exactly as predicted. Not the Crimea, incidentally, but the fact that he would expand and that Ukraine will be the first military conflict. Interestingly, from a historical point of view, it's almost a similar route to what Adolf Hitler followed as Chancellor of Germany. For his invasion of, the bloodless invasion of the Ruhr, the retaking of the Ruhr, that was akin to the battles of Chechnya. Then came the first conquest of Austria, which was again bloodless and simple, and that is rather akin to the Crimean one. It was a sort of Anschluss, the Crimea with Russia. And now comes a slightly more bloody war in Ukraine, but it is very, very similar to the Czechoslovakian crisis. In the Czechoslovakian crisis of 1938, there were Sudeten Germans, for these are the same as the Donetsk Basin Russians in Ukraine. They were the key point why the invasion could take place. But interestingly as well, Czechoslovakian independence was guaranteed by Britain and France, the major powers of the time, and it all came to nothing. Czechoslovakia fell after a very brief campaign. It's questionable exactly to what degree there was any fighting in Ukraine, in the sense that it's not a usual full-out conventional war, at least as far as one can tell. Although some bombs have dropped, it is nowhere near the sort of bloody wars that we saw in World War I, World War II. What is perhaps discouraging for Putin is that Ukraine is resisting at all. After all, the Germans occupied the Czech Republic without any problems in 1938. Again, as in the World War II, Poland is going to be the key country he conquers, which will trigger a further military escalation. I predict that if he invades the Balts, it is unclear that the West will do anything, and as for its sanctions, they are irrelevant. They are next to useless, and all they've done, all America has done, and for that matter Britain, is hurl abuse and raise sanctions, and even then the sanctions aren't full sanctions, recalling indeed the sanctions against Germany and other countries in the past, which were of limited use, and the ones against Russia of no use at all. What we can say, therefore, is that we are now facing the possibility of an escalation into World War III, and therefore the only advice possible, the only thing that can be done, is to put boots on the ground in Ukraine, certainly in Poland if Ukraine is too late, now. Otherwise, it will be too late and the war will escalate still further. It is very important to back up words with deeds, and unless there's a full military presence by NATO on the Polish frontier soon, then it's all too clear that there will be a possibility for Russia to invade with impunity, which will be very, very unfortunate, because it may well trigger further consequences and escalation in military conflict. Thank you.